I'm going to try and survive 100 days in Bedrock Minecraft Hardcore. I want to build the coolest base I can, beat the game, and even get a full set of Netherite gear. So, will I be able to survive the entire 100 days? Well, there's only one way to find out. As I spawned in, I instantly admired the surrounding spawn and was amazed at how lucky of a spawn we were given. And while admiring, I even noticed a village not too far in the distance. So after punching this chicken, I'm really not too sure why, I began making my way over towards it. Something I must point out is, which all of you may be wondering, is that for this video, I'm using the new Minecraft Bedrock shader feature called Vibrant Visuals, which in my opinion makes the game look so much better. After reaching the village and killing 3 sheep for their wool, I stole a bunch of crops and then found the village's blacksmith, which surprisingly gave me 5 pieces of iron. And after this, I then proceeded to carry on with my mission to run the village dry of food by stealing the rest of their hay bales, then use some wood from the villager's house to craft up some basic set of tools, which didn't last for too long, as after locating a small cave area, I managed to gather up some coal and enough stone for some stone tools. And after crafting up all of those stolen hay bales into some bread, I decided to depart from the village and head out to explore the world around me. That was until I pretty quickly found myself a kind of ravine looking cave, which is, seeing it was already quickly turning into nighttime, was the perfect place to build a small little hideaway. So after gathering up even more coal and even some iron, I dug out a tiny little hole in the wall to smelt up the iron. And eventually, after all of the iron had smelted, I crafted up 2 pieces of iron armor, a shield, and even an iron pickaxe. Seeing that I now had a slight better chance of survival, I chose to venture deeper into the cave, which led me to gather more than enough iron to already make a full set of armor. Back on the surface, I smelted up the newly gained iron with company of a new friend. Oh, hey, I heard there's iron around here. And after crafting up an iron chestplate, I had already gotten a full set of iron armor and even yet again another tool upgrade. Realizing I just spent quite a long time focusing on the mines, I decided just to run around and explore for a while. And after some good time of running around, I found yet again a ravine and another village. This time I kind of speed ran through it, doing the exact same as last time, killing all of their livestock, finding one of the most OP blacksmith chests I've ever seen, and of course tearing down the local villager's house and claiming it as mine. Now that I had emptied my inventory somewhere, I thought it would probably be a good idea to go and explore that ravine in hopes for diamonds, as if I could gather enough diamonds now, I could focus on many of my other goals for the video a whole lot quicker. At the start, I wasn't really having any luck whatsoever, spending my time just kind of fighting off any mob that wanted to try and end my world, and it was super weird, as the deeper I went down into the cave, the better chance there was for diamonds, yet I still had no luck. However, thankfully that soon changed as I started to find diamonds after way too long. Diamonds! Oh my god, these took their time, what the hell? By this point, I must have spent at least a few days down inside of this mine just to rack up a whole 10 diamonds. But my luck must have changed to be on my side, as soon after finding my 10th diamond, I went on a diamond spree, finding 1, 2, 3, 4, and even 5 veins of diamonds, giving a total of 30 diamonds. Which, if you really knew how long I spent down in that cave, is definitely a success. On the following day after reaching the surface once again, I used all but 6 of the diamonds to craft up a full set of diamond armor, and used the remaining 6 to craft up a diamond sword and pickaxe. Now knowing that I was more than stacked enough to not die, I wanted to start working on some sort of area to call home. So after some time of walking around and exploring, I ended up with an idea to flatten an area just outside of the village. This way we wouldn't be too far away from anything, but still have the access to all the resources that we may need. And after spending a good while terraforming the land around me and flattening as much of the land as possible, I finally had an area to build our first main house. Something I do have to point out is that for some reason in this segment of my recording software just decided not to record any of Minecraft's audio. It is very annoying, but I promise it will come back soon. Shortly after having the land flattened, I had the task of gathering all of the materials I would need for this base. And after deforesting a small forest worth of trees, I had enough wood to mark out the kind of structure of how this base is going to look. Whenever I build bases in Minecraft, I never really plan anything at all. I don't know if any of you guys do this as well, but I kind of just get some blocks and just build whatever comes to my mind. So for this build, I chose to keep the main wood type as stripped oak logs, and filling in each wall with a layer of cobblestone and birch planks. I just feel like the mix of cobblestone and birch makes any base look super nice. Then moving on to the second floor of the house, which I plan to use as the main living area, I repeated the same kind of design, gathering even more oak and birch logs, but this time making the second floor ever so slightly smaller to give us a kind of balcony on each side of the building. Moving on to the roof, I don't know if it's just me, but I hate hate building roofs in Minecraft. Something about them I just always mess up and they usually end up looking horrible. However, for some reason this time it actually didn't look too bad. And now that the roof was done, I spent some time kind of finishing up everything else of the build, like filling in the floor downstairs, adding in these nice looking plant pots, and even filling in all of the windows. Although this house did end up taking rather a lot of time to complete, it was definitely worth it as 1, we aren't homeless anymore, and 2, I actually have somewhere to store all of my loot that isn't just some villager's house. And well, now that one of my goals were complete, it came to me that the diamond armor that I was using was already slowly breaking. So seeing this, I decided to go and get all of the items to make a full enchantment table, like 1 final diamond, lots and lots of leather from cows, paper from sugar canes, and even obsidian that I was lucky enough to find inside of a blacksmith whilst exploring. I then used all of these resources to craft up an enchant table alongside enough bookshelves for a nearly max level enchant table. However, one problem I quickly ran into was that although we had enough bookshelves, I didn't have enough XP to even get any of the max level enchants. So after applying every decent mid-level enchant I could, I took this as a good time to go and hunt down some obsidian in the mines to build a nether portal. This way I could enter inside of the nether and mine up quartz for very easy levels. I'm not too sure if this is the most efficient way to get XP at this stage of the game. It's just something that I've always done. So you guys are going to have to let me know down below. And now that I had the obsidian, I could build the portal and actually gather enough XP needed to get a few max level enchants on the armor. And surprisingly, after not too long of mining quartz, I had enough, meaning in the next morning I could throw on a couple better enchants. After this, I then realized that now that I have access to the nether, I might as well explore it a little more. And really quickly after entering, I had already somehow located the nether fortress. Wait, no way, the fortress is here, let's go. Knowing that I may forget where the fortress was or just not want to come back to it, I decided to gather up all of the blaze rods that I'll need in the future now instead. And after only a few slightly close calls to death, I had gathered around 16 blaze powder and called it a day. That was until I remembered that I would also need a bunch of ender pearls whilst running through a warped forest. Meaning once again, after another couple close calls, I had both enough ender pearls and blaze powder for all of the eyes of ender that I should need. Now knowing that I had pretty much everything that I needed for the dragon fight, there was only a few little things that I had left to do before it was time to fight. And one of those things was to get mending for every piece of my diamond armor. And as most of you probably know, the best and quickest way to do this is to use a librarian villager alongside a Fletcher villager to make sticks into infinite emeralds. So after crafting up the first fletching table, I made my way over to the village to try and turn some villagers into librarians. However, for some reason, instead of doing what they were meant to, they kinda just stood and stared at me. Luckily, I knew that there was another village not too far around the corner that should hopefully give us villagers that work. And thankfully, seconds after being inside of the village, I had already located our first Fletcher villager, and he actually had the trade that I was looking for. Meaning after locking in his trades and putting him in this tiny little hole, all I had to do was go over towards a forest and deforest enough trees to make enough emeralds. Although, a problem I quickly ran into was the fact that the villager pretty quickly just decided to stop selling his emeralds. This wasn't too big of a deal, however with limited villagers in the village, I located down another villager and prayed that this didn't keep happening. Repeating the same process, I carried on getting every emerald I could until I had around 40 emeralds. As now I had the task of using a lectern to find mending from a librarian villager, something that usually takes me and most Minecraft players way too long to get. Luckily this time it only took a few minutes for me to get a trade of 20 emeralds for a mending book, which is actually very good. And to make sure I locked in the trade, I used all but a few of my emeralds that I had gathered so far to get me 2 mending books. Now after finding yet again another unemployed villager to make employed, I could now repeat the exact same process until I had enough for 2 more books. Thankfully I got decently lucky with the trade amount only being 20 emeralds, as it didn't really take too long to gather enough wood for enough sticks for enough emeralds. And before I knew it, I had enough emeralds to craft up a total of 5 mending books. So having completed my main wanted task, I returned to the base to grab all the iron I had and started smelting it up for an anvil. Then after a few minutes I could craft up the anvil and apply the mending to each piece of the armor and even the 5th mending book onto my sword. Super happy with now having a pretty good set of armor, I remembered that I was missing one pretty important item before I could hunt down the stronghold, a bow and arrow, as without a bow I would most definitely have a horrible time inside of the end. And after crafting up a bow, I went to see what enchants I could get and I saw that infinity was one of the options. However, I only had 15 XP levels and it needed 28, meaning I had no choice but to go back inside of the nether and do my usual strat of mining up quartz. Once again, this probably isn't by any means the most efficient way of getting levels, but it's really the only thing that I know. Although it can't can't be too bad of a strategy, as after only a few minutes I'd already reached 28 levels, meaning after returning to the overworld I could get infinity on the bow. Let's go infinity, at least I don't have to grind like 100,000 arrows now. However, one thing that I was completely forgetting was the fact that I didn't have any food or really access to any food source. So as one final task before hunting down the stronghold, I gathered up my 2 leads to get 2 cows and put them inside of a small pen to eventually have an infinite beef farm. And to let the cows breed, I just used bread from the villagers' wheat as my food in the meantime, which now meant after emptying my inventory and sorting it a little, it was finally time to kill the Ender Dragon. I started by following the direction of where the eyes of Ender were leading me. They led me through this other village, through a swamp, and then in probably the quickest time I've ever seen, the eyes led behind me, meaning I was already super close to the stronghold. Then once I was finally sure that I was in the correct location, I started mining straight down. Wait, what the? Oh nice, a library, I actually found it. And super quickly after entering the stronghold, I'd already located down the portal room. And it was super lucky that only one of my eyes of Ender broke, as there was only 2 eyes already inside of the frames. And after filling in the rest of the frames, it was finally time to try and beat the game. It was also around this point that I remembered that I was using the new Minecraft Vibrant Visual feature, and that I was super excited to see what the end actually looked like. So without any hesitation, I jumped straight in. Here goes nothing. And the second I loaded in, I was pretty surprised to find out that it actually looked like some sort of boss from a video game, unlike the normal Minecraft textures that make the boss, in my opinion, look slightly boring. Oh my, what the hell is this? I instantly started shooting the crystals, quickly realizing that I'm terrible at the game. I decided just to build up to them instead. And of course, the dragon was doing everything it could to not let me get to the top of the towers. However, I powered through, and once I reached the top of one, I had the perfect angle to shoot down a few more. I don't know if I'm just really bad at Minecraft, but I swear using the boat felt very different than in Java Minecraft. Also realizing that in this version I couldn't shoot between the iron bars, I pillared up on the final few crystal towers until finally every single one of them was broken and it was time to defeat the dragon. Hitting it with my sword and attempting to shoot my bow at it, the dragon's health was quickly declining, and after a few more hits of my sword, the Ender Dragon was defeated in Bedrock Minecraft Hardcore. One silly thing I did was stay in the portal after killing the dragon, as after the animation had finished... Wait... Oh my god, no way. That's a first. Luckily, as I found out earlier, the stronghold was weirdly close to the base, and after returning to the end, I could collect all of the XP alongside the dragon egg and then head through the end gateway to explore the further end for any end city that I could find, to get our hands on an elytra or 2. It definitely took its time, but after a very long time of running around the islands and nearly falling into the void a few times, I caught my first glimpse of an end city, and thankfully it was an end city with an end ship, meaning there will be an elytra. Once I got closer to the city, I realized that I actually got pretty lucky, as only a few hundred blocks in the distance was another end city with another ship. So after killing a few shulkers and making my way through the main building, I bridged over safely towards the ship, followed up by looting the 2 chests, giving me a very nice diamond chest plate, a few diamonds, and of course our first elytra. Now usually 9 times out of 10 I would go back in the same path of where I walked and return home. However, this time I was lucky enough to find another city super close to the one that I was just in. So seeing this, I threw on my elytra and glided over towards it, repeating the same exact thing that I did in the previous city until I had some more super OP armor and even a second elytra. But now these had both been looted, I had the extremely long task of locating another end gateway and getting myself back home safely. Thankfully, it didn't take as long as I thought it may, and after entering both of the portals, I had returned back to the overworld. Upon returning home, I grabbed my 2 leads, bred our cows, and then headed out to hunt down 2 sheep to put alongside our cows. And the reason I'm even getting sheep is so that eventually we can have infinite wool for infinite beds, as my next goal is to get enough netherite for a full set of netherite armor. So after crafting up a fresh set of shears, I went around and sheared every sheep that I came in contact with, and by the following day I'd racked up a whopping 36 wool, which sounds like a lot, but as I'm about to realize, it actually isn't too many beds. Although before crafting them up, I remember that you can use an anvil to kind of merge pieces of armor together. So using the armor I already had alongside the armor that I found in the end cities, that's exactly what I did. Then after I was happy with my armor, I made myself a shulker box for the beds and filled it up with them. Seeing the shulker box wasn't even half full, it came to me that every villager's house would have a bed. So after terrorizing the villagers of anywhere to sleep and repeating the same thing for the mending villagers village, I ended up with just about a full shulker box of beds. If any of you are wondering why I'm even trying to get netherite armor in the first place, knowing that my diamond armor is definitely good enough, that's because before the end of the video I wanted to try and attempt to kill the wither, wither, for both its wither star and to have a beacon around the base. And from hearing stories about how much harder the wither is in Bedrock, I thought that it'd probably be a smarter idea to get Netherite. So after finding the correct Y level, I used a whole 13 beds before finding my first vein of Netherite. Thankfully, my luck did indeed switch up, allowing me to gather a total of 10 ancient debris before making the very long journey back to the overworld. And I know what you're thinking, 10 ancient debris, that can't even make you 3 ingots. And the only reason I had to come back was to once again fill up the shulker box with more beds. So I thought, while waiting for the sheep to breed and the other sheep just to spawn around, I might as well work on another build around the base. Some sort of little storage hut where I could actually lay out my items instead of always having a messy inventory. To stick to the theme of oak for now, I went over to the forest and gathered up as many oak logs as I possibly could, followed up by placing down some sort of outline. I filled in the walls with oak planks, then onto the second floor where our more valuable items will be stored, I repeated the same design. And before I knew it, I had built a roof, placed down the floor, and moved in enough chests inside to finally empty my inventory into somewhere ever so slightly sorted than before. As for the upstairs of the storage room, I used the front middle chest to store my most valuable items inside. Now, still being in the building mood and seeing that my sheep count was still incredibly low, I took this as a time to try and work on the coolest build of the video, a huge farm that would give us access to infinite crops. I began working on flattening the ground, as the design that I had in mind was going to be pretty big. Once again, I still had no clue how to build the design, but with a slight idea in mind, I got to work, shoveling dirt, placing dirt, and repeating until I had a big enough area out the front of the base. Then with a few water buckets, I began punching a few holes around and filling them all with water, followed up by using a hoe to till all of the grass into farmland around the water. The main farm area was actually looking very good. However, the thing that really makes this farm stand out was the wall that I wanted to build all the way around it. I used both a silk touch pickaxe I had alongside my normal pickaxe to gather a bunch of different stone types and began working on the wall design, consisting of a whole bunch of normal stones, some stone bricks, and a load of cobblestone. I then went on to placing down every wheat seed that I had access to until I realized that I didn't even finish the wall. So after placing down some stone brick slabs and cobblestone slabs, followed up by some cobblestone and normal stone stairs, the farm was complete and looking better than I ever imagined. On the following day, being happy with the 2 new builds, I remembered the task I was halfway through with of getting another full shulker box of beds. Thankfully, with the time that I spent building those new builds, the sheep had bred a whole lot more, and not too long after going back out with a shear, I had gathered 45 pieces of wool, enough to craft 14 beds. So hoping this would be my last trip needed for beds, I headed back down to the correct Y level and began placing them all down. And surprisingly, this time my luck was so much better. I found 5 ancient debris in about 4 beds, and eventually with 15 debris to my name, I knew that I only needed 1 more to have enough for 4 ingots. And with still having a bunch of beds left, this pretty much seemed guaranteed. However, it wasn't until I was on my final bed that I was lucky enough to find the final ancient debris needed. I am so thankful that I didn't need to go back for another few beds. Something that I did forget when about to leave the Nether was that if my main reason for getting this Netherite was to hopefully kill the wither, I should more than likely go back over to the fortress and grind for 3 wither skeleton skulls. So as my final Nether grind for the video, that's exactly what I did. And by grind, I kind of just mean AFK in the corner of the hallways and wait for skeletons to come to me. Although this wasn't a bad idea at all, as this most definitely worked. Wait, is that one of them? Yeah, let's go. And after not too long, I'd already gotten the 3 skulls and made my way happily out of the Nether, knowing that I should never need to come back. Although just before I was about to leave, I found a piglin sitting on top of a strider. And I'm no Kamen 18, so I don't know how rare this is, but if someone knows, please let me know. Anyways, now that I was back from the Nether trip, it was almost time to finally upgrade my armor. I say almost as for some reason I got incredibly sidetracked, attempting to get silk touch on a new diamond pickaxe so I could mine enough nether gold for enough gold blocks for my beacon. Yeah, I know, I'm also not really too sure why I got so committed to getting this beacon. Either way, after spending way too long attempting and failing to get the enchant, I gave the enchant table one final attempt, and what do you know, it actually gave it to me. Now, if you're still confused on why I even just got silk touch, that's because I newly learned that if you use silk touch on nether gold and then smelt the gold, you would get an entire ingot. And knowing that I would eventually need quite a few gold blocks for a beacon, I for some reason set this as my main priority. Once again, I'm really really not too sure why. Luckily, it was a decently quick process, and while being back inside of the Nether, something I swore I wouldn't go back to, I did manage to find a bastion and get ourselves a smithing template, something that I would have needed anyway, so I can't really complain. Now returning to the overworld, I threw my ancient debris into a furnace and was waiting for all of it to smelt. However, in the corner of my eye, I noticed a wandering trader wandering around the base, and when walking over toward it to check the villager's trades, I saw that he was selling a spruce sapling. Seeing this super excited me, as 1, spruce is my favorite wood in the game, and 2, the final build that I had planned for this video would look amazing if it was built out of spruce. So while allowing the debris to smelt, I went on a fun side quest to get 5 emeralds and claim a spruce sapling. And by this point, all of the debris had been smelted, and I now had 4 netherite ingots, meaning the only thing that stood in the way of me in a full set of netherite armor was the 21 diamonds needed to duplicate this smithing template. Thankfully, whilst hunting for silk touch, I managed to pull the craziest pickaxe I've ever seen with fortune 3. So getting these diamonds didn't take me long in the slightest. While searching for these diamonds, I did actually come across a trial chamber. Wait, what the hell is this? Wait, isn't this... Yeah, trial chamber, no way. Although seeing my day counter was very quickly getting closer to the 100th day, I chose to leave the chamber for another episode. So if you want to see me explore the trial chamber along with make this world even crazier, make sure you subscribe. Now, not too long after leaving the cave and getting a pretty cool view of the base area, I'd returned back home with more than enough diamonds needed, meaning after duplicating the smithing template a couple times and applying the ingots, I had finally gotten a full set of netherite armor, which now meant after a little replenish of the farm with some bone meal that I had, it was finally time to attempt to kill the wither. Knowing how destructive this boss can be, I ran for a good while until I found a cave that looked nice enough for my possible death. And if you hadn't noticed by now, my recording software once again did that thing where Minecraft's audio didn't get captured. So this boss fight could seem a little less intense than it really was, but with the use of some slightly more intense music, you should be able to understand how crazy this fight really was. I was mostly using my bow whenever I could, and my sword whenever the wither wasn't flying 100 blocks a second around my screen. However, thankfully, after many close calls of death, I managed to get the few final hits in, killing the wither in Bedrock Hardcore. Now looking back, I am absolutely crazy for not getting a totem before attempting this fight. But thankfully, after all that we've been through on this world so far, I didn't just die to the wither. Then after resurfacing, I held tightly onto the Nether star and returned back home happier than ever. And not long after being back, I had gathered the resources to craft up our beacon. Let's go, a beacon! No way! It's like glowy, what the? Now meaning, after realizing my grind for silk touch did indeed end up becoming helpful, I gathered up a whole bunch of nether gold, 87 in fact I believe, and after spending what felt like days waiting for it all to smelt, I had 9 gold blocks, meaning that I now had a working beacon. Wow, yeah, look at that, our base is looking crazy nice. Then after selecting speed as the effect, I was finally ready to build the final build of the video, a barn for both of the cows and sheep, something that is probably very long awaited for them. Before getting to work on the barn, the first thing I did was replenish every single crop in the farm, and then gather some bone meal that I can use to help speed up the growing of my spruce saplings. I was slightly concerned when I grew both of my trees and got the smallest trees I possibly could have, as there was a good chance that I wouldn't even get a single sapling back. However, luckily I managed to get one which I could turn into a way bigger tree. Now with a small amount of spruce logs to my name, I could get work on the basic outline of the barn. I was debating whether to build 2 barns, one for each animal, or just to make one bigger barn to have both animals inside, and I ended up going with the idea just to have one bigger barn. Repeating the process of replenishing the trees, I used all of the spruce to finish off the main layout, and then started working on getting some kind of barn looking roof. I chose to use spruce slabs laid out hanging over each side of the roof in hopes to gather some sort of barn aesthetic. Then after a small while of some trial and error, I ended up with this, which I didn't think looked too bad. After the roof was finished, I then moved on to making a nice simple fence design using fence gates with a gap to put some normal fences between. And once I had placed them all down, it was actually starting to look like some sort of barn. Although I'm pretty sure anything that I build would be 100 times better than what the animals are living in at the moment. I then spent some more time adding some fences on the side of the pillars, alongside a couple lanterns outside and inside the barn, and then to finish it off, I replaced the middle walkway's floor with some spruce planks. And I can't lie, the final design was actually looking pretty nice. Meaning now that the barn was complete, I could come over to the original barns and kill every single cow except 2, hello, then lead the 2 chosen ones over to their new home. And then after repeating the same thing for the sheep, the barn was officially complete and looking amazing. Thankfully, the barn didn't take any longer to build though, as within the final closing hour of the world, I extended the path around and in between all of the builds, even around the entire farm, and then went around building a bunch of my favorite lantern designs. Then with the sun slowly setting on the final day on this world, I got on top of my house to watch the sunset while admiring all that we've achieved over the past 100 days. Then with the sun about to set, it had signified me that I had officially spent 100 days in Minecraft Bedrock Hardcore. If you guys ended up enjoying the video, please leave a like and subscribe. And if you would like to see me carry on with the challenge to 200 days, comment any ideas or builds or really cool things that you would like to see me do.